going on, Boosted Mob family? I'm Boosted Trav. Welcome again for coming to check out my next video. This is going to be an exciting one because as I actually go and film this and think about it, it's crazy to think that a year has gone by that fast. And with a year, with this Lotus Evora, let's talk about some of the things that I look back on and things that, with that experience that I've had thus far, things to look out for or to take into consideration for those who are watching my videos and maybe on the market for a Lotus Evora or trying to know a little bit more about it from a person from an ownership experience. We'll find out. So, one of the reasons why I bought the Lotus Evora was because I was wanting a car that would be both practical and usable from a daily driving perspective, or a car that I could drive and not ultimately be too concerned with the mileage that I'm putting on it, like a McLaren, a Lamborghini, or a Ferrari. But also I wanted something that looks amazing, as it had that exotic look. And I think when I compare this to, say, the 911 and the Cayman, just because of how common they are, that exotic-esque look of that type of car, if you were to compare that to the aspects of a Lotus, it did not have. But then on top of all of that, it needed to sound good. There are a lot of supercars and just a lot of cars, frankly, out today that just do not sound that great. I think the Lotus Evora still sounds the absolute business. It is an amazing sounding car. And then over all of these things, it needed to be fun to drive. There are a lot of cars out there that are incredibly fast, look incredibly good, but do not have that fun to drive aspect. They may be capable, but you don't feel excited per se when you drive it. I think when you think about the Lotus, all those things I just mentioned, obviously it has for reasons why I bought it, but it's just, you have to really think about that when you go to buy a car. I mean, this is an absolutely beautiful looking car. Anyone who tries to deny that this car doesn't look good is a fool. And then you think about the bracket for the money that you're paying for this car. It is, I mean, this is a beautiful car. And I've actually been out and it's been mistaken as a Lambo, a McLaren, a Ferrari, and I mean, those things cost so much more. And while I won't say that these cars cannot compete in some areas that those cars offer, it's kind of a good thing to have your car compared to cars that are seen as like the icon of the supercar class. So it's hard to complain there from that perspective. Now, with that being one of the pros, I will say it's a double-edged sword, and only for people who may want more, I guess. It's like, I've struggled personally myself, in all honesty, with it being a quote-unquote real supercar. And I've talked about that before in my video, is the Lotus Evora GT a supercar? And you know, still to this day, and as I mentioned into that video, sure, we can call it a super sports car, but honestly, it's still a supercar. It looks like a supercar. It's made in low production. It's handmade. It's foreign. It has the heritage of all the things that you'd expect from a supercar, and thus, therefore, it's a supercar. But it's not a supercar. And by that I mean, it'll never be like, you'll never get that energy like you get from a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, from that brand-esque influence in America. And for some, that may be a bother. You don't have that many people that own Lotuses to go out with, or Lambo Club or Ferrari Club. And during my time with the ownership, you could argue that that could be a problem, but you just have to come to terms and be like, what are you doing? Like, if I went out today and bought a Ferrari or a McLaren, you know, obviously it's going to cost more, but I don't think I personally can exploit more of that vehicle as I could from the Lotus. I don't think it's going to give me truly more as a car from a driving perspective on a daily basis than the Lotus isn't already giving me as a phenomenal car to drive. And I'm not saying that those cars can't be more capable. They're obviously faster, but I don't think on a regular basis I'm going to be driving at that speed difference to really be able to enjoy that increase in power, that increase in speed. So, I mean, for better or for worse, that's all I can really say about the Lotus and its brand against others, or wanting more supercar or this, that, and the other. But it's a phenomenal car. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty. You know, many have said, you know, Lotus is, you know, not known for reliability, and while that still may be the case today due to many factors being money and resources and the network that you have, both in America and across, you know, the world for a Lotus dealership or Lotus expertise, and they have a name that, you know, goes by lots of trouble, usually silly or usually serious, and by that it's because you deal with a lot of really iffy, funny things that you just quite honestly can't believe are things that you're dealing with, especially from a car made in 2020. But that's one of the things you honestly need to already come to terms with before you buy a car, and not be so shocked that you're dealing with those things, because a lot of the problems they've been in existence since the Series 1. But if you think about it in the supercar category, the motor is absolutely bulletproof, and if it does blow, it is it's pretty cheap to replace. I mean, it's a Toyota Camry motor for the most part. Those cars there's millions of them out there, so going to a junkyard, finding one to replace a blown motor in a Lotus, not much to really talk about there. That's pretty simple, pretty easy to do. But I have had some issues, and honestly a lot of my issues were there as soon as it left the factory, which is a bit of a disappointment, as I kind of said, things you wouldn't expect in 2020. But I'll list it. I think there's about 8 really major problems that I've kind of dealt with through my 1-year ownership with this car. And I guess I'll say they're not deal breakers. Obviously I still own the car, but they are troublesome. A lot of these I've mentioned in the 5 things I hate about my Lotus. You can check the video over there if you haven't seen that video and are interested. But you know, one of the things I'm still dealing with is the PPF. It's disappointing. The PPF on this car is yellowing. I don't think the PPF on any of the Lotus are good. I think straight from the factory is just a bad batch of PPF that you can have on this car. Mine will be removed. I don't know if I'll replace it with, I definitely won't replace it with the OEM PPF. I'll probably go down a different direction to get the same type of PPF replaced. But that's been one of my issues. Number 2, the seats. I'll point out all these briefly when I'm done, but the seats continue to unclip, particularly my driver's side seat. It just keeps coming undone. I don't really know if there's a permanent fix. You can get it replaced under warranty, but it'll probably happen again. I wish I could tell you what the real issue is, but it's there. My 3rd problem, my airbag cover. It's bubbling and the clips are coming undone, so it sticks up on the dash. This has been a problem since the Series 1. It's still a problem on the 400. I don't know if it'll be a problem on the GT, but given its years, it'll probably be a problem on the GT. So that's food for thought there. My seats, they aren't in the best position, meaning the Sparkle seats and rails combo as itself aren't better than the Recaro and rails that were on the Series 1. You sit a little bit high and your eyesight's kind of hitting up there. You can replace your seats and that can be fixed, but it's unfortunate that you have to replace your seats. I mean, you would think that the seating position would be a little bit better. Also, my seals. The seals, particularly around the side of my car, they leak. They didn't leak initially, or I didn't pay that much attention to them, but when I wash my car, it definitely leaks where my side view mirrors are on the car. That seal area, water leaks through, it drips down my door. It's unfortunate that I'm having those kind of issues. I did a quick research. It looks like there's been seal issues on these cars since the beginning. Some people will have it, my car has it, some people won't. Luck of the draw, I guess. And speaking of side view mirrors, I thought it was a me thing, but I randomly saw someone bring this up on the forums, and I was like, good to know it's not just me. Over 80 miles per hour, or at least that's when I notice it, when I'm paying attention, my mirrors vibrate tremendously. It's almost hard to be able to see out of them. And it's probably because that they're using these mirrors from a different really econ box, low-grade car, and I just don't really think they were engineered to be able to perform at those speeds. I could be just speaking wolf tails, I don't know, but they vibrate when you're going fast. It's unfortunate. I've talked about how ugly they are. I wish we got like Exige mirrors or mirrors that look more like McLaren or LaFerrari or any of those exotic mirrors, but instead we got stuck with some econ box mirrors, and that's that. Some other small things were electronic gremlins. My tail light bulbs, they're like a bunch of mini LED bulbs. They've continuously gone out, on and off. Sometimes they worked, sometimes they didn't. Thank God for GRP on the great V3 lights that I have on my car. You can also check out that video if you're interested in those lights. They are phenomenal. I advise everyone to get those. It definitely upgrade the car if you're into that kind of thing from a modding perspective. But also with my electronics, one of my paddles went out. I know I have an automatic. I don't regret getting an automatic. I think one of the pros of owning an automatic is the upshifts and downshifts of the car. They just have this very satisfying sound, this really crisp bang through the exhaust as you shift. I don't think you can get that out of the manual due to the delay, but it's awesome. It's crazy. I'm so numb, guys, that I feel like I'm stuttering over words. But with that, I will say that my transmission stopped working only because a paddle faulted. I couldn't go into park, drive, or neutral. It was a pain. I had to go through this full reset cycle and get it to the shop so that I can get that paddle fixed. So those have been some of my major issues over the year. I'm actually coming up on 15 months of ownership. I've put on about 6,000 miles myself. I'm at 14,000 miles, 14,500 miles on the clock, and it's been enjoyable despite those issues. I'll also say one thing from a cosmetic standpoint. I really wish we got the Evora 400 GT Sport GT 430 front bumper. I guess they never crash tested it due to budget. It would have made this car so much better. I've also talked about this when I talked about the GT 430, the high-end grade version of the Evora, more like a GT3 or GT3 RS. Phenomenal car. Absolutely jealous of the people in Europe or anywhere else across the world that got those imported. You guys are lucky. I plan to do that import of all the parts and do that modification to a GT 430 US spec myself in the future. There's been two people that I've been following closely who have. I haven't seen their cars yet. I hope to see them soon, but beautiful. I mean, absolutely takes the Evora to another level. Now, I will say one of my favorite things about this car, and will probably always be my favorite thing, is how well this car is to drive. I mean, the driving experience is phenomenal. It is like nothing I have ever experienced before. I've been in faster cars, I've been in louder cars, but I just can't put words to how this car is to drive. It's so fun. I always want to take it out. It is such a pleasure. Guys, go drive this car if you haven't. If it's on your list of cars you're considering, scratch all the numbers you see online, drive one. You will have a different experience. That's all I can say about that. Now, with that, I will say it's not the fastest. It doesn't have the best transmission. It's not the most exotic motor. But none of that stuff really matters. I've struggled and I've gone back and forth with, does it need more power? Back to my topic on, can you really exploit more power on the road? I don't know. I mean, I don't even know if I can even track this car at 10/10ths and be effective with it now, but I long for more power. When you hear about, oh, it only has 400 horsepower in today's time, it sounds low, it could be bothersome, it's hard to explain that to people. You might want more power. I mean, supercars are at 550, 600, 700, 800 horsepower. You want more naturally because of just how the world works. But you don't need it, you just want it. So, I might do the headers, I might do the tune, just because it's out there and I want to experience that, but I really don't think you need more power in this car. And then another thing that I'll talk about from the fun to drive perspective, people, I've seen on the forums and I've seen on my YouTube comments, people ask, can you daily drive this? You can 100% daily drive this car. It is a smaller, Toyota Camry, man. That's the best way to say it. People daily drive 911s, people daily drive Caymans. This car is as daily drivable as those cars. The only limiting factor is space, but from a how do you feel, I don't get out of this car feeling like my back's broken. I don't feel exhausted driving this car. I could definitely drive this car across country with absolutely no problems. The reliability is pretty solid, so I don't struggle with like the mileage and stuff like that. Now, I guess I can understand because most people are familiar with Lotus and the Elise and the Exige. Those are small cars. Those are like four-wheel pocket rockets. I mean, they are bare bone, very freaking Spartan. I mean, very focused. And yes, you can daily drive those if you're crazy. But this car and that car, they're different. Same type of personality, same mission on, having lightness to propel its performance, but it's nowhere near as Spartan as those cars. It's plush in here. It's very plush in here. So yes, you can absolutely daily drive a Lotus Evora.
I guess we'll find out if we're
now, some of the other things that I want to say is that back to the if you haven't driven the car, some of the cool things about it is it is scary how easy it is to drive a Lotus Evora fast. I mean, the first day I got it, it just felt like me and the car are one. The steering on this car is so telepathic. It's probably its #1 namesake. The handling is bar none. I just can't explain what you feel in your hands, in your fingertips, in your feet, in your butt. Just the way it feels is crazy. Does it have the fastest G-force numbers around an 8, figure 8 or Nürburgring record numbers? No, but there's cars out there, like I said earlier in this video, that could do those things and you just don't feel that blissfulness, that perfectness in a car. This car gives you that all the time. So with that, it's scary how good this car handles, the feedback that you feel, the ability that you can take this car, but I still think it gives you a pleasure in just how capable you have to still be to take this car to the edge. It's easy to get into and drive fast. It takes time to drive it to the limit because it's so freaking high. This car is so capable, and for that I'd say it's probably one of the best sports driving cars to have on the road today, and especially because it uses the fundamentals of a sports car. It's still very mechanical and pure and not being propelled by widgetry and gadgets and technology and active yaw, four-wheel steer, all-wheel drive, all this crazy computer knowledge to take it to the limits that a lot of cars do today. This car is pure, and as we get into electric vehicles and Teslas and yada yada yada, you're gonna want something pure like this to really experience what it means to drive. So with that, I will say buy yourself a Lotus Evora 400, and if you can, at least drive one. You will love it. I plan to have many more years with this car. I love it. I'm so glad that I bought one, and I'm excited for many more miles to go.